Hi, I'm Troy Stetina. Welcome to my beginning rock lead guitar video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you some lead basics that'll really make your playing come alive. So let's get started. The basic rock scale is a minor pentatonic type. Let's build it in A. So here's your A5 power chord that's going to mark our position. The bottom note of this chord is our root note, A. And here's how you read a chord diagram for A. The horizontal lines represent the frets, and the vertical lines represent the strings. So that's an A5 shape in a chord diagram. Now let's build an A minor pentatonic scale from this root note A. The first note is A, the root. Then you have a minor third, C. The fourth is D. The fifth, E. Minor seventh is G. And then we're back to A at our octave root. That's the first octave of the A minor pentatonic scale. Notice how the chord shape fits in and blends in with this pattern. Also, when you play the scale, it's very important to start right from the beginning with the right kind of string muting techniques. And what I mean is, as I'm playing, for example, the notes on the sixth string, my index finger is lightly touching and muting all of the other strings so they can't ring out. When I'm on C, same thing. Nothing else will ring. D, to play a D on this string, same thing for the higher strings. And for the lower string, see how I'm touching it with the tip of my finger. Same thing here. G. Now I'm bringing my thumb up higher around the neck to hold the bottom string quiet. Now let's add another octave. Starting at the root, here's your minor third, fourth, fifth, minor seventh, octave root. So that's the 2-octave scale. And to complete this position, we'll add one more note here, the minor third. Now we have a 2-note per string shape, and because of that shape, we call it a box. This one is called box 1. So here it is ascending, or going up. And descending. Here's a common extension on the low end of the scale. As we're coming down the scale, right here, instead of going to this note on the 6th string, we're going to play the same C note, but we're going to do it on the 5th string by sliding down 2 frets and playing it there. Then we can play our root here, and we can add in our minor 7th, G, down below the root. So you can play up and down through that scale with using this shifting approach, like this. And down. Okay, there's also an extension on the upper end of this scale. As I play up to the scale, at that point on the 3rd string, I'm going to shift up 2 frets. Then I'll play my minor 7th here with my 1st finger. Here's the root, minor 3rd, and now we add a higher note, 4th. Now here it is if we put all of those extensions, both those extensions, together and play up through what we can sometimes call a diagonal shape. You can also take all of these shapes and repeat them exactly 12 frets higher. That's called the octave position. So instead of the 5th fret being our basic position here, where our bar chord is, go up to the 17th fret right here. By the way, the fretboard repeats from the 12th on up, following the same pattern as from the nut. So 2 dots above open is an A. Also, 2 dots above the octave with double dots is also an A right here, 17th fret. And our pattern repeats here. Box 1. Or our low extension. And the high extension. Okay, so that's the A minor pentatonic scale. Now let's use it and create some exercises and licks and see what we can do with the scale. Often we play notes without picking them by using a technique called hammer-ons and pull-offs. Here's a hammer-on. First I'm going to play the note here at the 5th fret. This would be a minor 3rd C in the key of A. And then I'm going to hammer down my 3rd finger onto the 7th fret. That's called a hammer-on. The opposite of a hammer-on is a pull-off. So now I'm going to start on the higher note, the D, which is the 4th of the scale, and I'm going to play that and then pull this finger off the string and down to pluck it and sound the next note, C. Now when you do these hammer-ons and pull-offs, especially the pull-offs, you have to really be careful that you have the right kind of string muting technique that I mentioned earlier. Otherwise, you'll get a lot of extra strings doing this. And you don't want that to go on. So what I do, again, is lay this first finger, I'm playing on the fingertip, but I'm kind of laying it over enough, just enough, so that it catches these strings and holds them mute, and this string is muted as well. Now we can combine these hammer-ons and pull-offs into something we call a trill, like this. Now for example 5, we're going to take these trills on each string through the A minor pentatonic scale. To come down the scale, starting at the top, or descending, what we're going to do is use the pattern starting with a pull-off, like this. And then when we get to the bottom, we're going to come back up by turning that pattern around, starting with a hammer-on. Okay, so here we go. Example 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's what it sounds like when you speed this up a little bit. Coming down would be like this. Etc., all the way down. And then coming up, the pattern changes to this. Okay. Now let's shorten this trill pattern and change it into, instead of I guess 8 notes on each string, let's drop it down to 4. Here's what it sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next example, number 7. Now we're going to shorten it down so there's only 2 notes on each string. And it creates a pattern like this with pull-offs. It'll look like that. In other words, you can think of it as a group of 4 on 2 strings as being 1 unit. So that was 2 units of that shape. And then at the bottom, coming up, we'll change it into hammer-ons like this. Here's example 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, one thing that you might have noticed as I'm playing these is that when I'm in playing the higher strings, my thumb tends to be up here. And that's a good position, especially when we get into string bending later. It's a good way to play these notes in the higher strings. But when I come down lower, you'll notice my thumb drops down so that I can reach around the neck a little better. You want to be able to shift and float between these 2 positions. Okay, the next example, and the last one in this section, is example 8. Now what we're going to do is take a hammer pull and take a different shape. That is, we're going to use this shape of 4 notes, and we're going to repeat that. And we're going to take that up and down through the scale. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Vibrato and string bending are 2 of the most important aspects or techniques in rock lead guitar. First, let's look at finger vibrato. Vibrato is really a series of short bends and releases, or rather, actually, quick bends and releases might be more accurate. What I'm doing is using a pivot type of vibrato, where I'm turning my wrist. The pivot point is right here, where I put my first knuckle against the bottom of the fretboard. My thumb goes over the top to leverage it, to hold it better. And then when I put my finger down here at the 5th fret, I can twist my wrist and pull that string. You always want to make sure that you have a nice, controlled, and start out slow vibrato. It's better to be even and smooth, because then speed will come in time. So start out with just a few bends. Always make sure that you come back to the unbent note. And then build it up. Okay, let's take example 9 and just take that vibrato on each note of the minor pentatonic scale. Now in the low notes, you can't push the string. You can only pull down to cause the vibrato. On any of the middle notes, you can either push down like this, or you can push up. Either way. I generally tend to pull down, and then, of course, when you get to the first string, you can't pull down, and you pull it off the end of the frets. You have to push up. So here's vibrato on each note of the minor pentatonic scale. Example 9. Now let's look at whole step or 2-fret bends. I'm going to take this note at the 7th fret on the 3rd string, and I'm going to bend it up a whole or full step bend. Notice that I'm using my 2nd finger behind the 3rd finger to reinforce it, so I have more strength and control to do the bend. Also, the pitch that I'm reaching is 2 frets higher than the 7th fret. It would be the same pitch as this. In order to get a better feel for exactly how far to push the string to get these 2-fret or whole step bends accurate, we're going to practice something called double stop unison bends. Double stop means that we're going to play 2 strings together, and unison means that they'll reach the same pitch. So for our first double stop unison bend, notice that this 9th fret here, that's the target pitch of our bend, is the same note as this on the 2nd string. So when I bend up, they reach the same pitch. Notice how the turbulence stops between the notes when it reaches the accurate pitch. That is exactly the 2-fret bend. Now let's try a double stop on the next 2 strings. I'm going to take this note, and I'm going to take this note, and I'm going to bend until they reach the same pitch. Okay, so here's example 10, double stop unison bends. We can release a bend by pulling it back to its unbent position. Now when you do that, you don't want to lift up pressure off the fretboard. See, when you're bending up, you're pushing not only the string up, but you're also pushing against the fretboard to maintain that contact against the frets. And then when you release, pull it back down, maintaining pressure against the fretboard. Here's example 11, bend and release. In rock guitar, we call commonly used and very short groups of notes that usually involve bends, hammer-ons, and pull-offs, we call them cliches. Here is the first cliche in example number 12. Now to play that, what I'm doing is I'm doing the 2-fret bend, and then I'm going to go to the next string, and I want to do it with an inaudible release. That is, I need to get off of this bend. I need to release the bend, but you don't want to hear it before you go to this note. So what you do is right at the last moment, right as you go for that next note, you back off the string and don't just pull it back to unbent position, but relax the pressure and let it come off the fretboard. Also, to keep these strings quiet when you do a bend like this, I'm using a lot of my right hand, either the palm or this part of the thumb, right down here. And I'm letting these 2 strings ring together as a double stop. So that's the first cliche, example 12. Now here's some variations of that. And the other variation? Example 13 goes like this. It's somewhat similar to the cliche I showed you in example 12, except this time we hold the bend, I skip this note, and I'm going right to the first string. Here's some variations on that. And then another variation uses this bend instead. Our third cliche is example 14. And some variations on that. How about this one? Or this one. Example 15, our fourth cliche. Here is a variation on it that moves it up to this string. Now let's go back to the third string and let's add a few notes to it like this. Or here's another variation. Now we're going to apply some of these cliches into some lead licks. Here's example 16. And example 17 sounds like this. Now let's add a vibrato bend. What I'm doing is first bending up to pitch, then releasing the bend just a little, bending back up, releasing, bending back up, and that's how we get our wavering. So start it slow and make sure that it's smooth, just maybe 2 or 3 bends. Then go for 4, 5. Okay. Example 18 is a lick with some vibrato bends. Here's another form for the A minor pentatonic scale. Example 19 shows an A5 chord first that's going to mark our position at the 12th fret. Notice that the root is on the 5th string. That's an A. Now, if we go up the scale, it looks like this. Root, minor 3rd, 4th, 5th, minor 7th, root. Notice that that looks exactly the same as this octave. Okay, now let's continue in this position. It looks a little different on the next string. Shifts up a fret. Here's your minor 3rd, 4th, 5th, minor 7th. So box 4, A minor pentatonic, looks like this. And of course, you remember our octave rule. We can drop this down an octave by lowering it 12 frets. All of the notes at the 12th fret become open, and A minor pentatonic looks like this. We can also add an extension to this scale the same way we added extensions to the other scale. Example 20 shows box 4 with that low extension. So from the root, we drop down to here, slide, slide. Here's a few typical box 4 type licks. Example 21. And I want you to notice on that first shape that we used repeatedly, this one, notice that really that's the same type of shape that came out of example 4. We just applied it to the new scale form. That lick also used one of the cliche variations. Our next lick is example 22. To play in different keys, we simply slide all these pentatonic patterns and shapes up and down the neck. For example, let's move to the key of E. Example 23 shows first the E5 power chord at the 12th fret. That marks our position for box 1. So box 1 in the key of E is right here. It looks like this. And we can add the low extension to that, just like we did before. can also add the high extension. So that's all of box 1 and the extensions on box 1 in the key of E. There's also an E power chord right here. And that marks our position for the box 4 shape, which looks like this. Again, there's a low extension on this shape. So that's example 23. Now let's shift or transpose one of the licks that I played earlier in the key of A. Let's transpose that now into the key of E. Example 24 is the lick I played for number 16. Now it's in the key of E. Now, to practice shifting up and down the neck and playing in different keys, I'm going to introduce an exercise to you that moves through 4 different positions. You see, because playing at different points on the neck, say down here in the 3rd position, feels a little different. The angle of your hand to the neck is a little different. The frets are a little wider. Up higher, the angle changes and the frets become narrower, so it feels different to play at different points. Example 25 is going to take a lick and create some variations on it as it moves through 4 different chord positions. We start in D, which is at the 10th fret. Then we'll shift down to A at the 5th. Then we'll move up to the 8th fret for C, and down to G at the 3rd fret. So our box 1 shapes, or box 1 positions, will go from D, 10th, 5th, A, C, 8th, and G, 3rd position. Here goes example 25. You may have heard this before, and it's definitely true. Sometimes it's not so much what you play, but it's how you play it. Let me show you what I mean. Here's a simple lick. Sounds pretty plain. Now I'm going to play that same lick and I'm going to juice it up a little. What do I do differently? Well, quite a bit actually. Let's go through it step by step. First, we'll look at the left hand. The first thing that I'm doing in my technique is that I'm holding all the strings quiet, like I mentioned earlier. It's very important. Holding all the strings quiet that I don't want to ring out. That way, when I pick, I don't have to worry about exactly hitting just the string I want, and I don't have to worry about any extra strings ringing. The next thing that I'm doing is incorporating a number of different bending approaches. Let's talk about some of these in more detail. First of all, you can bend up very slowly. I call it the slow bend. And what happens is, as you reach toward your target pitch, you create tension as you near the pitch. Listen. You feel that tension as the note nears the pitch and finally reaches it. So slow bends is one approach to bending. Another approach is to bend up immediately. It's sort of the reverse of the slow bend. You just hit it and hit right to pitch, and that can sometimes have a lot of energy, show a lot of energy in it. Okay, the third way that we can bend is to introduce vibrato bends, which I already mentioned before. Again, very important. Now, vibrato bends you can control as to be very fast or very slow, so there's a lot of leeway in there to exactly what you sound like. You can do this. Or how about a fast one? Or a wide one? Or how about a real narrow? See, each of those gives slightly different inflection, so there's a wide range of choices there. Now, how about turning it around, bending up immediately, and then dropping slow? You get the same tension effect. Okay, there's another approach to bending, too. The last one I call the blues bend because it has a bluesy feel to it. And this time what it is a bend just at the tail end of a note. Let me show you what I mean. If I take this note and I basically play D, the fourth, and right at the end I'll just bend up and then go to the minor third. And I can do the same thing here, bend this one, I'll pull down to bend. So you can hear what kind of effect that gives. It gives a real bluesy. I also used a very strong and aggressive finger vibrato. Instead of just hitting the note like this, that really makes the licks come alive. And I also threw in a slide. Instead of just playing the notes and staying in this position, slide off the note and also back. Sliding can add a lot to licks. For example, if I'm going up to play a simple lick in E, and now let's not forget about the right hand. When your left hand is doing its job muting the strings, the right hand is much more free to really attack the strings, really whack them, and not worry so much about exactly what string you're picking, although you generally want to hit the right string at the same time. You get a lot more aggressive right hand action then. Now, let's take this muting idea on up higher on the neck, and I'll show you something called the rake. It's very similar. When you're muting the strings, you can intentionally rake the pick across the strings. It kind of thickens the notes and gives a good meaty tone to it. So that's called the rake. We can also spice things up a bit with some artificial harmonics. Now, to do artificial harmonics, or pick harmonics as they're sometimes called, as you pick the note, it's a very subtle technique, but as you pick the note, you touch it lightly right here with the part of your thumb. You can also touch it with your finger or anything. I usually just touch it with my thumb because I have a lot of control there. Much more easy to control. So what I do is as I pick the note, I touch it lightly and move away. It changes a note from this to this. And as you can see, with the different points that I pick on the string, I can create different harmonics. Now, to create a palm mute, you take the heel of your right hand, or the palm of your right hand, you lay it on the bridge, and then roll forward just slightly to cover the ends of the strings. Then, instead of a note sounding like this, now with the palm mute, you get a muffled tone. And with a lot of distortion, it makes a nice solid crunch with a real bassy tone to it, like this. And another closely related idea is staccato. Staccato means to play a note very short. So it's not exactly a palm mute, because you're going to play the note out, and then you're going to stop it. And that's where the palm comes in. You stop the string. Of course, really both hands are involved in staccato, because to stop the strings, you stop them with both hands. Left hand mute goes to a mute, and the right hand stops the strings. Staccato would sound like this. Now let's take some of these subtle articulations, different types of bends, mutes, rakes, everything, staccato, And let's use them in some licks. Example 26 is a lick in E. Example 27 gives you another lick, this time in the key of A, box 1. Notice that lick in A only used 4 different notes. It still got a cool sound out of it. We create the blues scale by adding a diminished fifth into the minor pentatonic. So here's the A blues. There's our new note, the diminished fifth. There it is again, an octave higher. And descending. And here's what it looks like up in box 4. There's our diminished fifth. And there it is again. So that's the blues scale in A. Here's 2 licks that use that scale. Example 29 in box 1. And here's another lick, example 30, this time up in box 4. And on this box lick, what I'm going to do is hit this high diminished fifth. Instead of actually fretting it, I'm going to hit it by bending up to it from the note just below it. So it's a half-step bend instead of the full-step bend that we had earlier. Here we go. Example 30. We have the Dorian mode if we add a second and a major sixth into the minor pentatonic scale. So here it is in A, in box 1, in just the upper register. Example 31, the Dorian mode. There's our major second. There's our major sixth. That's another new note. And here's the second again. Example 32 now is a lick that uses that pattern, the Dorian mode. Also notice in that lick that I threw in another half-step bend. That is, I played the major sixth and bent it a half step up so it reached the pitch of a minor seventh right here out of the minor pentatonic scale. Now let's combine the Dorian mode with the blues scale, and then we create what we call a hybrid scale. It's the combination of those 2 scales together. It looks like this. So example 33 is a lick with double stop bends that uses this Dorian blues hybrid. Notice that when I got to those double stop bends, what I'm doing is bending the 4th degree of the scale up 1 fret, reaching the diminished 5th. That pulls it from the blues scale. And here's the major 6th of Dorian, bending up to the minor 7th and back down. Together, sounds like that. Here's example 34. For faster picking, we need to use an alternate picking format. That is, instead of just using downstrokes of the pick, we're now going to also catch the string on the upstrokes, like this. Example 35 uses this alternating picking, applying it to the shape of the minor pentatonic. Now, when we add a hammer-on or a pull-off into the pattern, generally we want to maintain the same alternating sequence for the rest of the notes. So this time I'm going to throw a hammer-on and a pull-off into this sequence, coming down and then back up through the scale. For example 37, now I want to take the shape that we used way back in example 4 and apply an alternate picking format to it. So let's shift up the neck to the octave position of A and watch the picking of the right hand. Next, let's cover scale sequencing. Sequencing a scale means that we're going to take a pattern or a figure and we're going to repeat it over and over at different steps through the scale. So our first example, example 38 here, takes the pentatonic scale and sequences it in groups of 4. It goes like this. Now notice in that example that what happens over and over is that after you play a group of 4, you have to roll your finger over change strings, maintaining the same fret. This is an excellent exercise for that. What you've got to do is come off the one string and roll onto the next so that you don't let both strings ring together like this. Don't want to do that. Like that. Now let's sequence that same scale in groups of 3s. It would look like this. Now I'm going to sequence it in groups of 3, and I'm going to add a pull-off into the pattern like this. So here's example 39. And to extend that example, or that exercise, you can shift up the neck one fret at a time, like this. And you can keep going like that. Now, let's try a sequence in 3s with the Dorian Blues hybrid scale. Example 40. The tones of the major pentatonic scale are 1, 2, major 3rd, 5th, major 6th. So if we look at it to play A major pentatonic, here's our A position, and this note was our root A. Now, let's shift down and play it with our fourth finger, the little finger. Here's our second, major third, fifth, major sixth, and our octave root. Notice that that shape looks just like F sharp minor box 1. That's because A major and F sharp minor are related. In other words, A major is the relative major of F sharp minor, and F sharp minor is the relative minor of A major. And what that really means is that they share the same notes. It also works with the pentatonics. A major pentatonic shares the same notes as F sharp minor pentatonic. So now let's make these minor boxes into major pentatonic boxes by welding them to the major chord shapes. Example 41, here is the A chord followed by old box 1, F sharp minor. Now here it is, up 12 frets in the octave position. So the trick is that the relative minor is always 3 frets below its relative major. And we can use that so that anytime you want to solo in a major pentatonic scale, all you have to do is drop 3 frets and use the relative minor shapes. Of course, it's good to see the major chords underneath them as you're playing them. Now I'm going to play some simple licks over a rhythm track that uses a major progression, and I'm going to use the A major pentatonic scale. Example 42. In that last solo, you probably noticed the brighter major quality of that major key with major pentatonic licks, as opposed to the quality of a minor key and the minor pentatonic licks. Now we're going to mix majors and minors. First we'll look at throwing major thirds into minor licks. Here are the major thirds relative to the minor pentatonic pattern in A. The next lick adds a major third into a basically minor lick. Example 43. Example 44, a major pentatonic lick with a minor third added in. We can also shift completely between major pentatonic and minor pentatonic in the same lick. Example 45 does this. It starts in A minor pentatonic and then it shifts into A major pentatonic. Notice the change in the color of the lick. Example 46 is another lick that shifts from A minor pentatonic into A major pentatonic. And then, right at the very last note, I shift back to minor. Here's another short solo over another rhythm track. This time, I'm going to mix major and minor pentatonics in the key of E. Example 47. Well, that's a wrap. I've really enjoyed sharing this information with you, and if you want to learn more about guitar playing and about music, you can check out the other videos in this series. There is a beginning rock rhythm guitar video, a metal rhythm guitar video, and an electric blues video. Also, I've got a number of books entitled the Troy Stetina series, and they include a lead guitar method, a metal lead guitar method, and an advanced technique book called Speed Mechanics for Lead Guitar. Well, keep practicing, keep rocking, and remember, repetition is the mother of skill.